Hey guys, so it's me, Nicolette Mashile, and today I want to tell you guys a story about my beautiful but very delinquent tenants that I had back in 2017 and how that actually might have helped me stumble on a very lucrative property investment idea. And I know that already in the world it is happening, and actually in South Africa there is litigation that has been made providing for this specific thing, right? So let's jump straight into it, but remember that none of my videos constitute as financial advice. If you are looking for financial advice, please speak to somebody who is certified and registered with the FSCA. So back in 2017, actually, I think we started off with these guys in 2016. I put out one of my rental properties on the market, and I had a lady come and view. She viewed, she loved the place, and she wanted to rent it immediately. Then I said to her, no, we need to wait until the month kind of ends, and then we will start the actual lease on a clean month, right? Not a problem. She said to me she would be moving in with a friend, and I was like, not a problem, as long as both of you sign the lease and both of your names are actually on the lease. And she said, cool, it's not a problem. I was like, all right. A week later, I get a text message from her saying, listen, my friend actually needs to move in a little bit earlier than I had anticipated. So I said, you know what, as long as you guys have signed the lease, you've paid the deposit, I have no problem with when you move in. You will then pay the pro rata rental amount for that month, right, that we were actually finishing off. They had no issue. They signed the lease, they paid the pro rata amount. I went and I handed over my keys. We did an inspection, everything was hunky-dory, right? They stayed in my rental apartment for a couple of months without giving me absolutely any issues. Then one month their rent started, like a few months their rent started becoming late, or they just would not pay their rent. Then I would send them emails and they would quickly find a way in which they remedy the problem. Not a problem, we went along, and for a year, I had problems here and there with them, but not really serious problems. Then over the December of 2016 going into 2017, these people just decided they're not gonna pay the rent. This one went on holiday, the other one just apparently moved out of the house, so this lady could not pay the rent anymore, I am assuming, but she did not communicate this with me. So after a couple of attempts to get her to pay the rent, I decided, you know what, maybe this is not the right time for me to send her a formal request to remedy the breach in the contract, because obviously in your lease it stipulates the process that you are supposed to be following, right? The PI Act that you're supposed to follow when you want to remedy a situation where a tenant is not paying their rent. Okay, not a problem. So I followed due process, sent her the email, actually got a lawyer to drop off the letter. This lady was just absolutely MIA, right? Her stuff was still in the house. So I said, you know what, let me give her a chance. Eventually, after like 3 or 4 weeks, she sent me a text to say, listen, I'm sorry, I've been on holiday. Where I was, there was no Wi-Fi. And I was like, okay, whatever. Clearly, there was also absolutely no network, but it's fine. So eventually, she came back and she told me that her other person had moved out. And I said, no issue, you need to find another person. She then tried to fight me because she said, but we had co-signed we both had signed the lease, so I'm actually only liable to pay the certain amount of money. And I said, no, that's not how it works. You both co-signed for the full rental amount, and it stipulates in the contract that if one of you is to move out, the person that stays on the lease is still fully responsible for the entire rental amount. Okay, sharp, not a problem. She said, you know what, she'll find a plan. So what her plan actually consisted of was her moving other people into my house. The one day I went there and I realized that, yes, there's just so many things that are happening in the house. But you know what? They've rented my space. I cannot dictate to them how they live. But I could see that they were stacking up like their furniture. There was like 2 washing machines, 2 fridges. And I thought, okay, maybe somehow she's bought new things, or the person that's moved in, maybe there's a new tenant that I have not been told about. So I went to her and I said, listen, tell me what the situation is. She's like, no, the room is still empty. Nobody has moved in. Okay, sharp, not a problem. Then this one day, while I was going to my other apartments in the same estate, I thought, you know what, let me actually go and visit this person, pay this person a visit, because they're not paying their rent. So really they are seizing their rights for me not to just pop in, right? So I decided to go there, and when I arrived there, guys, there were like 7 people in the house. Literally in the living room, what they had done is they had spread out mattresses and people were sleeping in this house. And apparently these people did not know that I owned the house. They thought she owned the house. So they were renting from her. So basically what she was doing is she was renting a rental apartment out. So she was subletting other people in my house without my knowledge. Now, the one thing that really did help me with the situation was the fact that in the lease that she had signed, there was a clause that said subletting is not allowed. Now, generally in most leases, you would expect this clause to be in there, but sometimes it is not in there. And according to the South African law, and I stand to be corrected, subletting is actually legal. So you may sublet an apartment that you have leased out. So you would hold a lease with the landlord, and then you would become a landlord to those who you sublet to. And it's actually allowed. Guys, how unbelievable is that? So most of the questions that I get from the social media, people asking me, can you rent out a rental? So let's say, for instance, you rent out an apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment, you rent it out you get rented from the landlord at 8,000 Rand per month. Then what happens is you maybe move into one room, and in the room and the lounge, you then rent it out to other people, and then you collect more than the actual rent that you would pay off to the landlord. Now, obviously, this can become a very big issue if you have not let your landlord know that you will be subletting the property, because ultimately, if the landlord doesn't know and he evicts you, he will also evict your subletted tenants. So he will only say, I have a contract with you, and because you're subletting, you're in breach of my contract, and I can evict you, and ultimately it evicts everybody. So it is very important that if you're going to be looking at subletting an apartment or a flat or a house that you have rented out, you need to make sure that the landlord actually knows. You also need to read what your actual lease says. Does it allow you to sublet? Often you will find that, and this happens to me quite a lot, I have a sister who is in varsity, and literally because she's in varsity and they work with school terms, there are months where she's not in the house. Now, unfortunately, we signed a lease that says we may not sublet, but I just think that over the December period, there are some people that might need the space while my sister's back and the bundu's at home. We could be subletting this place because we ultimately are paying rent for it and no one is actually living there. Anyway, so this strategy is a strategy that is used in the UK. There's a lady who's using, I think it's a lady or a man, I can't remember, can only be one of those, who's using it in Nigeria and is making a killing. This man that I've read about in America, in the UK, is literally subletting 400 apartments. So what he basically does is he looks for great apartments or great houses. Obviously, a 2-bedroom might be a little bit difficult for you to sublet because there's only 2 rooms, right? But if you get, for instance, one of the old, the flat that my little sister and them used to live in had like a 2-bedroom but a huge balcony, and the balcony was actually covered. So you could turn that into a 3rd bedroom. While you're paying the landlord the right amount of rent that you've agreed on, you could be using that additional money for other things, right? So it's the same thing if you find a 3-bedroom or 2-bedroom house that's got maybe 2 or 3 receptions, you could turn those into other bedrooms. So there is a great opportunity, but it does, like everything when it comes to investment, like everything when it comes to making money, there are rules and there is litigation. So you need to find out what the rules are. I don't know if you can actually rent out a full house and not actually even live in a part of the house and re-rent it out to other people. I might need to do a little bit more digging on that. But remember, as I said again, none of my videos constitute as financial advice, but here's an idea. If you really want to go into property, you don't have the money to buy your own investment property, this might be something you could potentially look at.